Well, what's the mood when you go to work in Washington, D.C. and you see your colleagues, the congressmen, the senators, and so on? Do you get together in a coffee room and start talking about what the mood is like in the individual districts? Is there sort of a collective unease, even on Capitol Hill?
Well, there is, because we all know that people tend to vote their pocketbook. And with an election coming and people aren't working and maybe don't see the prospect of working, there's a lot of anxiety. And so we know that we're out there running. And if you're an incumbent, you are considered the one who made this or haven't fixed it, one or the other or both. And so a lot of members are concerned and have real concerns about whether they're going to get reelected. And you know, that's, the American people can react that way and say, well, anybody who's in, we're throwing out. That's a simple-minded, that's a 8-year-old solution to something. The question is to evaluate what your member has done in terms of trying to push it forward, and keeping people, because we can see progress. I mean, we lost, if you take all the GDP that we lost, we hit bottom in July of 2009. And we've come back up. We've got about 70% of our GDP back. But the 30% is the top part where the jobs are. And we're just starting to get into that, because now people are saying, well, people are starting to buy again and things are happening. So maybe we can add an extra person, or maybe we can open a shop, or maybe we, and I think that people have to be patient. I mean, that's the biggest problem. And I don't know how you teach people patience.
Yeah, I don't know if you can.
I don't think you can.
Right, and then you've got this whole controversy over whether to renew the Bush-era tax cuts. Where do you stand on that? Because it just seems like there's so much polarity on just whether or not to tax the rich, because it's the rich who create the jobs. Do you think that that's true, or do you think that... Okay, that's what I was wondering.
No, I don't think that's true. Here's what the Bush administration did. They were like a terrorist tax bomb. They passed these tax credits, 2001, or these tax cuts, and they lit a fuse. It was a 10-year fuse to 2010, and said it's going to go off in 2010. We'll be out of office, and whoever's in office next will have to deal with it. So here comes the fuse, and it's got to be dealt with. They gave tax cuts where about 70% of the money went to the top 3% of the people, people above $1 million a year income. And frankly, I don't shed many tears for people who are living on $1 million. I mean, if you can't get by on $1 million a year, you probably ought to look at your budget a little bit, because there's some place you could save a little.
I know somebody like that. I hate to say this, I really do. So
I look at it as something where I think we ought to take care of the people at the bottom, make sure that they're not hurt more. But I don't see any problem with people above $250,000, which is what the president's proposing, putting a tax on them and saying, hey, look, you got to help us, guys, to get out of what we're in. We gave you a tremendous break for 8 years, for 10 years. Now's the time to pay the piper. You've got to help us get ourselves out of this. And to me, that's a fair exercise of the power of government. I mean, a civilized society requires taxes. You can't get rid of taxes. I mean, people who talk, well, I don't want any taxes. Well, I'm sorry. They're out of it. Because you got to have taxes to pay for fire protection and police protection and schools and highways and National Institutes of Health, all this stuff, and a military. So you've got to have taxes, and the people on the top who are making $4.25 million probably can afford to give a little bit.